Michelle. Oh, here comes everybody. Amazing.
It's fun.
This is one of my favorite parts, watching all the logins happen.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Hello, Eileen.
Hello, hello, hello.
Got Bonnie. Hi, Doug.
Hi.
See you, Richard. Sabina. Wow, Peter Jones. I'm just so impressed and thrilled how many folks are joining with this sunny sun out there.
The sunshine does call, but
Yeah.
but I was so anxious I tried it at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Got in there early.
I thought, why isn't this working? Oh, dear.
How is everyone doing? Thumbs
Good.
up from Heather. Thumbs up from Alice.
Oh, we got Mari. Hi, Mari. Doreen. Is that Rudy and Elizabeth?
Thumbs
Hi.
up from Sabina.
Oh, the couple. Both of you. There you go. Hi, Elizabeth and Rudy. So nice. We'll start in about 30 seconds or so. Give or take a few seconds. Hold on. See some more folks logging on.
Well, from the list you sent me, Amanda, there were 70 signed up, so
Mhm.
hope we get them all, but if not, we are happy with the ones we got.
Always. Got a couple extra people in screens. Hi, Rob. It's the first sunny day in Vancouver. I'm impressed, like I said, any of you are here. It's lovely. It's a big day. We're celebrating our AGM too after. I'm sure most of you know that too.
Click on mute and then we click on unmute. Oh,
There we are. Okay,
There
finally
we
got it.
Yeah,
We hit 9 degrees Bella Coola today. That's the
Ooh,
highest
so
we've
we-
had in a while.
That sounds wonderful. 9 degrees.
fantastic.
I'm in
Joan-
Ontario right now, and we're at about 11, I think. It was a beautiful sunny day here too.
Great. Well, I think we're going to get started. So your mics will be defaulted off. And so, but if you have a question, I can do a little housekeeping. You can pop them in the chat. But I really wanted to start by making an acknowledgement that I am on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And as is a tradition that we have here, we ask people who are on other lands to, in the chat, right where you are. And we have tons of gratitude, of course, for the thousands of years of stewardship on these lands. And also, as the lands that we occupy, I also want to comment on the space that we occupy right now, which is the space at 368 Pell Street. It's our transition, and it's our administrative time. In this time, we're going to be here. And why I bring this up is that we're in what has been colloquially known as Japantown. And in 1913, a bank was built for the Japan Trust Co. And in 1913, it was like the center of commerce here, of Japanese commerce. And in the 1940s, it was confiscated during World War II, where many possessions were taken from Japanese Canadians and where they were put in camps through the whole decade. And actually, the bank was never given back. And I tell this story to just acknowledge land that we occupy, spaces that we fill, and how we operate here in the downtown east side as First United, to always be mindful of that, certainly as we are on our ongoing journey of reconciliation and as we're moving into, our new building, creating new spaces and places. So thank you everyone for being here today. Super appreciate it. And, you know, Toast Talks is a tradition. It's a series we started actually almost 2 years ago to the day. Tomorrow would have been the 2-year anniversary that we started it. And the intention of these is to gather, to hear more about our work, to get inspired about the work that we do. And of course, mentioning anniversaries, this is the third anniversary of COVID, if you will, of a global going into our lockdowns. And so just being mindful of that time too, and the learnings that we had there. So as our tradition of Toast Talks, we won't be here longer than 45 minutes. I'm going to share some highlights from the annual report that we just dropped this week that really discusses the fiscal year of October 1st to September. I'm going to invite Reverend Jennifer to come and share about the spiritual care as well. And then we'll be out of here by 5:15. We'll have time for questions. Then there's a break and you can come back for the AGM at 5:30. We do ask that you keep your mics off, and this is being recorded. If you don't want to be videoed, you can turn your video off as well. And so since this is a year of transitions, and that's really been the focus this last year and a theme for this evening, I wanted to invite all of you to share in the chat, those that would like to, fill in the blanks, this question. Transitions make me feel blank. I'll go first. So transitions make me feel very excited, but also very nervous. Holding space in this role right now, you know, in this time in our history, it's exciting, but it's nerve-wracking. It's hard work. And so I find this term transition interesting as well. Often we interchange it with change, but transition is more than that. It's about the process upon which we go towards the change. And that's certainly where we are right now. So I invite you in the chat to put in a word, transitions make me feel, what do they make you feel? So what did we experience during this transition year as well? We had a big staff leadership transition.
Amanda, do you want me to say anything before or are you after?
Oh, I was going to invite you. Why don't we do that now before I get into here? Sure, go ahead, Heather. I'd love that.
Oh, I'm sorry for being so bold, but I was asked to
yes,
to say a few words that I didn't know whether. Anyway, I'll just be bold.
I was the best for last, but I invite our amazing chair to begin. Yes.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, before, you know, in case some people leave a little early, I wanted to welcome you all and to this, and also to welcome you to stay for the AGM. Very exciting, of course. But no, it really is a time for seeing the board at work and decision making and what we have done. And you're all welcome to stay for the, maybe Amber will put the link just in case you've lost it, for the AGM. And I just wanted to emphasize that while you're all welcome, unless you are a community member or a director, you can't vote. So you're also very, very welcome to take out a community membership. Doesn't cost anything. And then you can have a vote at the AGM. And Amber, maybe you can put your email address in the chat, and that's who to get in touch with. She'll send you a form and it's easy peasy. So I just welcome you. Thank you for coming to this, and I hope to see you at the AGM.
Great, thanks, Heather. So here we are, there's our Carmen. So as everyone knows, she is the moderator of the United Church of Canada. She's on a leave for 3 years, and I'm holding space in this time period at the organization. But we also have been navigating some other promotions and leadership shifts as well. There's a picture from our Christmas party there on the screen. Just want to say, and I know a lot of folks are on the call too, Keely Hale is our Director of Community Services. There's Katie Conkin was promoted to the Director of Development. We have Natalie, who is the Director of HR. There we have Reverend Jennifer, who's our Interim Director of Spiritual Care. There's Rob, who's promoted to the Senior Director of Finance Administration. Missing from photo is Sarah, who is our Director of Systems Change and Legal, which I'll get a little bit more into. And so in this transition year, whether it was from locations or staff and everything in between, we've done our best to manage each change with discernment and compassion. This is a dream team, and we saw having plans, strong communications, we can make these shifts much smoother. Of course, having a strong board chair, thank you, Heather, and having the rest of our board feeling quite committed and then confident in our leadership, it's really helped us embrace these operational changes while also responding to community needs, which is why we are here. We are here to serve the downtown east side. So our vision is a neighborhood where every person's worth is celebrated and all people thrive. And for nearly 140 years, we have been providing essential services, community connections, and healing. This has been a very big year of change in our history. We have said goodbye to a well-worn but absolutely beloved building as we have been preparing for redevelopment. We have moved our programs into 6 locations in the community. And with transition, of course, comes us having to adapt to our new spaces and places. So one of our locations is a shelter. It moved to 467 Alexander. It is a 49-bed shelter. It is co-ed. It is pet friendly. It's one of the most low barrier shelters in the community. It is next door to the Japanese language hall. And to be honest, they weren't quite excited to have us as neighbors. And we spent a few months doing some community engagement, some town halls to really have dialogue around their concerns. And I'm really happy to say after 9 months of moving in there hasn't been one complaint or concern brought to our attention. It's been quite a nice relationship. And if you're ever interested, if you look up the history of that location as well, their story too in this neighborhood is quite powerful. I mentioned Powell Street 368, that's our administrative office. Our advocacy office is at 542 East Hastings, which it's been for a few years, but it will move it back into the new building when we're complete. Our 501 East Hastings is our community help desk. That's with our harm reduction, our SOCs, our mail program, our taxes that just kicked off last week. Many other things, did I say mail, where you can pick up your mail? Our 360 Jackson Street, which is adjacent to that 501, is where our spiritual care is, which Jennifer will speak more to. But we're also starting to open up that space as a drop-in. And if you don't know already and haven't heard, we just relaunched our foot care, foot soak program this week, actually. So we're looking forward to growing that again. We know how treasured that is here for community members, other social service providers, and so many of our volunteers. Last but not least, our food program, it's at 628 Clark Kitchen. It's this beautiful kitchen further east that we share a space with Recovery Cafe and Dudes Club. And what the team does is they make the food there, and in a cargo van, they take it to the shelter every day. And then with the community meal program, they take it down to Gore and Hastings on the food truck. And just a brief little anecdote about the food truck, when we were trying to get all the permits, because you might imagine it takes a lot of work to get permits for things. We're trying to get permits for this food truck, and we're trying to get parking for this food truck. And last summer, with the encampment happened during the summer along the Hastings corridor, the city was getting really concerned with all the propane tanks in all of the tents, and they asked service providers if they could respond and help to feed community so that people weren't making food on their own out there in unsafe ways. And so First United, of course, as we always do, we wanted to respond, but we wanted to park in front of our construction site for the continuity, and that is right core in the center of downtown East Side. But it's really hard to get parking. And so they gave us, because we were responding to the encampments, they gave us a temporary, we didn't know it was temporary, a temporary parking pass to park out there. And then 6 months later, I kid you not, 6 months, so someone in the engineering department right on time took down the sign and we no longer had parking, but nobody knew that it was only temporary. And so I called up the city to try and arrange for us to get parking again. And had a wonderful conversation, exciting chats about, since the 1930s, good old Jenny McDuffin, Bob Burrows could probably tell you stories from his book about starting the meal program during the Great Depression on that corner. And I was like to the city, we've been serving there since the 30s. Are you going to tell us that we can't now? And so we now have a permanent parking pass, so we don't have to worry about the truck. And I said to them, but we don't need it a permanent. We just need it a couple more years. And they were like, no, it's fine, it's fine. But it was a funny story. And in addition to the work that we do on the front lines, life-saving work, we also are building out our systems change work. So we know that we need to be, we're called to do social justice, and we know that we need to advocate for a more equitable society. And that's why we've taken strategic steps to include systems change in our work, focusing on upstream solutions. And we want to remove societal barriers that keep individuals trapped in these cycles of poverty. So the housing and the overdose crises are two key areas that we are making progress on this year. I mentioned Sarah was initially hired as a staff lawyer, and now she's the director of system change. And what she's doing is building out law reform and has launched the first phase of an innovative eviction mapping project. And so the aim of this project is to understand the impacts of eviction in BC through survey responses, which we've almost got 500, and which will be visibly represented on an interactive map. The data will then be used to make evidence-based case for law reform with the goal of creating stronger protections for BC renters. Ultimately, what we want to do is prevent homelessness. And we want to be able to support, like we always do, the most vulnerable in this ongoing housing crisis through long-term policy solutions, and more to follow on that. Next, this didn't happen in our fiscal year, but definitely just want to leave space and acknowledge saying farewell to the First United Church Social Housing Society at the end of 2022. After 40 years, we said goodbye to our amazing friends and colleagues, and transferred ownership over to Luma. And the main reasons being that Luma has a portfolio of larger projects and is able to have the capacity to serve the tenants differently and to improve the building conditions because they are in desperate need of repairs. But we still see them in the neighborhood. We miss them, but the staff all stayed. They're just under the Luma, who is a partner for us too in the new building when we open. So as we transitioned into 6 new spaces, that meant we transitioned out of our 320 old space, right? Our beloved but well-worn space. Many of you may have been aware or participated in a couple of events or ceremonies of that day, one of which was the decommissioning ceremony. That's the picture of us in a circle there. So 40 members of our community of faith gathered with us in a circle as we did decommission the structure. From its accustomed use as a place of ministry, giving thanks to God for all the ministry, the service, the justice seeking, and the spiritual friendships that have been taken place within those walls for decades, and really a powerful moment of offering in our next chapter of transition, that during this time of construction, we can still serve and have the ministries of First United throughout the community in this time. I was very struck by the power of this day, by the progressive stories of the participants. It was very humbling and powerful to witness. And of course, the other picture of the totem pole, many of you are familiar with. We, with the staff, did a ceremony with Bernie, who was one of the original Haida carvers. If you remember 2010, it was carved in our basement. And it was given as a gift in the spirit of reconciliation. And what it's meant to represent is a symbol for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this community, and also the homelessness crisis. But as I always say when I repeat the story, and I always say this story because and it was given with permission for us to tell, is that Bernie said it's not about homelessness, it's about houselessness. We all have a home, the home is our land. And this day was just a very poignant closure to the building, but there are so many other stories and powerful moments in ministry that occurred within those walls. And so what else happened last year? Our campaign launched, our First Forward Building Connections campaign that we call First Forward. And so we launched it in November. We had a goal of $30 million. By the end of the fiscal year, 25 million was secured. We were thrilled to say that $1 million was pledged between the board and the cabinet, and over 8 million from communities of faith and United Churches. I've been in this field for 15 years, supporting capital campaigns. I've never, ever seen so much generosity and power that this campaign has brought. Such generosity and outpouring of respect for the project, the need for the project, the call for the project. It's been such a privilege. What we typically do with capital campaigns as well is we do public awareness, and that's not just to raise money, it's to raise awareness. And if you've been really aware of the last year, I mean, it's not new, but the narrative in the downtown east side has gotten quite intense. It's a lot of vitriol, it's a lot of misinformation. And so we like to use our campaigns to frame stories in different ways, using a compassionate lens, using a lens through dignity. Many of our billboards and ads would say you can't put a price on dignity, which is important to us, and just shifting the conversation, and it's had positive feedback. Since we are among friends, though, I will talk about price tags. The goal is no longer 30 million for the campaign. It is now $37 million. And that is in line with the increases of construction in many projects. Ours is no different. It's through inflation, supply chain issues. But we're very confident we'll get to our new goal. We have until 2026 to do so. Thank you to so many of you on this call who have donated, participated, advocated, shared the work to help us get towards these targets. And our timeline, wants to know about the timeline. After a year delay because of record-breaking asbestos, we're almost done. So the building will be coming down in June. We will, of course, send more information when we have firmer dates, but it's still on track for that. And it should only take about a month. Then from there, the construction should be finished September 2025, allegedly. But everything seems on track right now. So our financials for the year included here is a chart. We have a chart, which are our revenues and expenses, and they actually include all of our programs, including the emergency shelter, which is a vital service and program we've been operating for over a decade. What many people, I don't think, are always aware of is that shelter programs are fully funded by BC Housing. And this year we had a shelter shortfall, which we often do. It is always paid back in the next year. So that's why this slide shows a deficit. If we didn't have that shelter shortfall, which will be paid back this year, you'd see a surplus of almost $250,000, which is pretty incredible. However, if you stay around for the AGM, our Senior Director of Finance, Rob, is presenting financials, and there's more conversation around that there. So from there, I'm going to pass it to Reverend Jennifer. And like I said, at the end of this, we'll have some more space and time for questions and go from there. Thank you so very much. Reverend Jennifer.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honor and privilege to be here to talk about spiritual care at First United in this time of transition and change. I call it the ministry of presence, purpose, practice, and proclamation that lives here. And so we all know of the past in terms of 140 years of presence in the downtown east side of Vancouver. And we all know of the church, as we're called, on Gore and Hastings, as a one-stop shopping location for many spirit-filled programs and ministries. And I think that's the real joy and the significance and the continuity is that we keep responding and serving the needs of the community. So in 2023, we are still coming out of pandemic living and reconnecting with people and programs. And we, as we said, we moved our programs, kitchen, shelter, administrative offices, all of that to 6 sites for this interim period of property development. And these are really exciting times, but also stressful. And the spiritual care department is holding the hope and offering spiritual care services and programs during this time of transition and change. Where is First United? At 6 sites, but still located in the downtown east side of Vancouver, still serving, still here, still a well-known and respected presence in the community. And we are living through the change. So what is spiritual care in such a time as this? As I said, it's a ministry of presence, practice, programs, and proclamation. And it's evolving and changing as the organization continues to evolve from being a congregation of the United Church of Canada to a faith-based service provider in the United Church of Canada and in the downtown east side. So the spiritual care team shows up at activities, events, specific places, and we are present to and for the people. We listen, offer resources, prayers, spiritual practices, memorials and rituals. We organize retreats and programs of meditative arts, card and craft making at Christmas time and Valentine's Day. We host coffee hours at the Spiritual Care Center and blessing people on the street or in their offices. We bless the hands that serve. We offer ashes on Ash Wednesday, and we respond to the spiritual needs as requested and required. We create seasonal resources for our communities of faith, write a weekly theological formation, WTF Instagram post that I'm loving, and write weekly rest emails for the staff. We spend time at the shelter, the food truck, and on the street. We work with the Downtown East Side Pastors Association and other allied groups in the work of truth and reconciliation, social action, and social justice. The Spiritual Care Committee, no, not committee, the Spiritual Care Department has chosen truth-telling as our theme and lens for the next few years. And this year we created a Lenten calendar with 40 days of learning, activities, and resources for anyone on the truth and reconciliation journey. So I'm hoping that's all of us. And the focus is on the TRC call number 60. And I want you to hear these words of that truth and reconciliation call because it's significant. It's the focus of the whole calendar. We call upon leaders of the church parties to the settlement agreement and all other faiths in collaboration with Indigenous spiritual leaders, survivors, schools of theology, seminaries, and other religious training centers to develop and teach curriculum for all student clergy and all clergy and staff who work in Aboriginal communities on the need to respect Indigenous spirituality in its own right, the history and legacy of residential schools, and the roles of the church parties in that system, the history and legacy of religious conflict in Aboriginal families and communities, and the responsibility that churches have to mitigate such conflicts and prevent spiritual violence. So that's a pretty heavy call, and the Lenten calendar is a serious piece of work that responds to that call and unpacks it in many ways. And it can be found on the First United website under resources. So I'm going to ask you to please check it out and encourage others to do so and offer up some feedback, because often we make, or at least I feel, I make the resources, I'm like, who's this for? I send it out there, and then you don't hear anything. You don't know if people used it. You don't know if it was useful or awful. And so feedback is appreciated in terms of our, connection and communication. And so we look forward to hearing from that. And I want to thank Lauren Saunders, the Indigenous Spiritual Care Chaplain, for her work on this project. And so it's a piece of work that I really hope that others will use and learn from. And so the Spiritual Care Department offers our services to all, staff, community, people of faith or no faith at all. We are accessible by appointment, phone, text, and during open spiritual care office hours or spiritual care hours at the center. We spend time at the food truck, the shelter, and on the street, engaging with the community, and we're available to listen and offer spiritual care. I have been loving the blessing booth, and it has been a real joy to just be on the street offering blessings, affirmations, and prayers to anyone who might want or need, and just the mutually beneficial relationship that comes from that. And so we offer our services to all who come and who might offer, or who, if we're on the street or wherever we may be and where we show up. And that's why I call it the ministry of presence, because it's about showing up. And it's a ministry of practice because we practice that presence in a variety of ways. It's a ministry of programs as we evolve and change and keep trying new things. And it's proclamation because it's about our service and the faith base upon which we are called to serve. And so spiritual care is holding the hope that still lives here. And we are serving the spiritual needs of the people through this time of great change. And we are partners in the process of serving, and we are not alone. And so the call to care for the community is still ever present, more so than ever. And one of the things I'm enjoying is how I'm evolving and changing in my own vocation, and the differences between working in a church and in First United, which is a church, but a faith-based organization and quite different in many ways. Currently, the United Church is using these words: bold discipleship, deep spirituality, and daring justice, as the words to describe who we are and what we do. And as we are part of the United Church, we too share in these ways of being in this place and time. And so bold, deep, and daring are we as we move first forward with faith and await the new building, which is like the promised land, and the spirit-filled service we will offer from that place. So please hold us in your positive thoughts and prayers as we are called to hope, and we are answering that call, and we know that hope lives here. Thanks be to God. Any questions or comments? Wide open.
I do, Jennifer.
Mhm.
But anybody put up their hand, please say, we have this great resource here. We lost Jennifer from the board of directors for a while she took up this temporary post where we don't know where it's going. But Jennifer, I just wondered, because it's no longer a one-stop shop, for First United and all its services. How do we make the presence of the community ministry office available or visible and welcoming? Because it has to be intentional, I think, on the part of the person to actually find their way there.
Absolutely. You're naming one of the major issues, because when it was one-stop shopping, you could build spiritual care on top of everything else we were providing, right? So when you're eating with someone, you talk about other things when you're right. So it was all in that building, and you could direct people to a variety of services. Now we have to go to them. That's the difference, right? So there's two things that are happening. One is going to where the people are. So for example, the blessing booth is on the street. Right? I'm not expecting people to come to me to look for prayer. I'm going to them. So I hang out outside of 501, and the community help desk makes hot chocolate. And I stand there with my little sign that says prayers, blessings, affirmations here. And it is amazing what happens there. And so part of where we're at now and letting people know about our presence is showing up. And so the street is one of them, and just taking it to the street. So when I walk through Oppenheimer Park, like, I know people now, right? From the blessing booth, we get to know people. So I'm getting to know the community by being in the community. So that's one of the things that's happening. The other thing about the spiritual care center is I call it the spiritual care / activity center, because there's a bunch of activities that take place that are all First United, and it's a place where it's like a hub where we can make things happen. So we're using it for a variety of programs, right? Advocacy will be using it for some of the work that they're doing and some of the circles that they'll be having to further their work. Community help and programs uses it to do training with the nonviolent crisis intervention training that all of the staff have to have. And so part of it is just usage and upping the usage and animating the space, but also about what programs are there. So for example, Foot Care's back, and I was at another meeting online, and I heard like someone else external to First United, but raving about the program and saying that fully emphasized like the fullness of who we are in terms of serving the people and doing the work, and how happy he was that the program's back. So consistent programming, a calendar of events that the development and comms put out so that other agencies know. So we're trying all the ways to still make our presence known in terms of, here's where we are now, by going to the people, but also communicating through the networks and trying to be consistent, I think, in our programming and offering. Is that a reasonable response, folks? I'm looking at some of the leadership here. Anybody else want to chime in? Does that answer your question, Heather? Okay.
Thank you. Well, yes, it answers it, and just I think illustrates how what the challenges are to carry on right now.
Precisely.
And I see.
But we've always had challenges, right? Like my understanding of this church in this community is it's always been challenged, which was one of the reasons as a student I tried to stay away, because I knew it'd be a hard community. I was always involved at arm's length, even with the board. I was involved, but Now that I'm frontline, whole other experience. It's a hard and holy community, right? And so that's why we're thankful for the prayers of the people that are out there, for the support that's out there, for the partnership that's out there, because it's a hard and holy community, and the work is in your face.
Yeah, I see Susan has her hand up there.
You're on mute, Susan.
I know, there we go.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by this blessings booth you're talking about, and you've described it, but then you've said, and wonderful things happen. So could you give me a few examples of
Sure
how
thing. Sure
you
thing. So
responded?
I'm right on the corner, right?
Right.
Buses are going by, traffic's going by. First, I'm going to tell you another story, okay, to lead into this. I lived in Bermuda. There was a man called Johnny Barnes. Every day from like 5:30 in the morning to 7, thank you. He would be out on the street waving to people as they came into work, saying, "You're loved, peace be with you," like just blessing everybody. He did this for like 25 years, every day. Rain, snow, sleet, well, not sleet or hail, because not much of that in Bermuda. But he died. They put a big statue of him. His legacy has gone to other places, including Guelph, Ontario. Don't know how it got there. But when the idea struck me, it was like, I'm Johnny Barnes. I'm out in the world offering the love to the people. And so that's the pre-story, okay? And so what happens on the street, because literally that's the Ash Wednesday sign, because I was offering ashes, but the blessing booth sign, it says prayers, blessings, affirmations here. And so as people walk by, they either ask for things. So for example, one man crossed the street and he said, "I just went to a funeral for a friend and I'm really sad," right? We talked about his friend. We talked about grief. We talked about his faith. I prayed with him, like with the hands-on prayer. So there's that other element of literally laying on of hands. And it was this just incredible experience of his, mutual spiritual nourishment by being able to, the spirit in me greets the spirit in you and meets you where you're at and proclaims the good news to you that, you are worthy, you're loved, whether it's an affirmation, a blessing, or a prayer. So I also ask people what their faith tradition is, right? Because if they have one, right? And speak to that. One day, a woman came by, looked at my sign, read it, and said, "I need all three," and just gave me a big hug and then walked away. And I was like, okay, this is what it is. And so you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get the stink eye. Sometimes you get the, I don't think so. Or the parents don't look at you, but the children do, and you wave to the kids. Sometimes the cops go by. I piece them and I do this. I give them the "I see you," or a whole busload of people. And so there's something about loving presence on the street, not asking for anything, offering what we can offer, which is to bless one another, to affirm one another, to pray for one another, if they want it. I'm not forcing anybody. And I wear this because I struggled with, do I just look like a crazy woman on the street with a sign? Or do I have to identify myself in terms of being a minister of word, sacrament, and pastoral care and what to do? So that vest that you're seeing is my WTF vest, which is "Where's the faith?" or "Where's the food?" or "Where's the fun?" or there's endless WTFs, but it started with "Where's the faith?" And I think the faith is right here and right now, being able to meet people where they're at and offer them prayers and blessings and the love of God right here and right now on the street. So there's all kinds of examples. So we could do it, Susan, but that's just a hint of.
It's good to hear about that. And I just also wondered if you'd ever point people in the direction of the listening post if they
Definitely. As a matter of fact, I went to the listening post the other day. I had a great conversation with Margie. We talked about maybe the Indigenous, Lauren spending time there as the Indigenous spiritual care chaplain, and actually having time at the listening post, because I think it's right next door to other Indigenous agencies, and just her front-facing place in the community. And so, yes, the listening post and I are in contact, and I'm about to connect with Barry Morris for the Longhouse, who's doing a whole bunch of work as well. And so, you know, the partnership circles, there's all kinds of other networks of connection that I'm slowly picking up. I'm 6 months or 7 months into this. It's, you know, as I say, I've had to ramp up and, you know, toughen up to the role. And I'm living in Coquitlam, so I'm commuting. We won't even talk about that. But so, you know, we're picking up all of those relationships and reconnecting and doing what we can to, you know, keep it all going and let people know what's happening. Yeah. And invite people into it, because we're not the only people praying or caring about these issues. And so now the Spiritual Care Center, we're going to move into, now that we're back to in-person stuff, we're going to begin to host groups. So our next, the next meeting of the Social Justice Committee of the board will be meeting on site at the Spiritual Care Center. So we're going to start using it as a hub to also bring people in. So things like Healing Touch might take place there. Other, like, there's all kinds of possibility. So I'm quite excited by it.
Just to let you know, like, I've been volunteering at the Listening Post for about 18 years. And I go now every other Friday. Okay. And I do Healing Touch when people ask for that. But also we have a meditation time at 1 and at 3. So if ever you're out in the street and would like just a break for a second for 20 minutes sit, please feel free to come at one of those times. And on any day of the week, I know that Sabina's here, and she's also a volunteer, and you know Margie. So, and I met Sabina, and we connected with the Healing Touch people, because you know, I'm a Healing Touch practitioner as well. And so there's lots of opportunity, right? And so I'm still getting my bearings in many ways and working through some things. And here we go with what's possible in this place and what's possible in the new place, because we're dreaming forward, right? Yep. This is an interim period. And so it's holding the hope in the interim period, but also like visioning to the future and still serving right here and right now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you. I think we have time for another question. Do we have any more questions?
Thank you all for being here, for listening, and for caring so deeply for all these years.
I'm going to pause us 10 more seconds with questions. Yeah, there's Peter Jones. Peter.
Thank you. I always can come up with a question. I'm not sure if this is the right forum, Amanda. I wanted to ask the first forward question around money. And I was just wondering if the recent announcements of the government of BC create an opportunity for some increased contributions from BC.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, that's always appropriate to ask our redevelopment question. It hasn't affected us yet, but I'm participating on some of the roundtables around the downtown east side. There's a group of 10 of us with the Premier and the Minister of Housing, just talking about different ways to respond. And when it comes to the additional funding, we haven't seen that yet, or any sort of announcements. I mean, there was the one about the 500 million to housing, et cetera. But what I'm trying to campaign for is the non-residential portion of our first floor floors. So the actual project is now $92 million, the 11-story project. Our 4 floors are 37 million. The 7 floors above have received amazing, beautiful grants from the government, but we have yet to receive a big influx of cash for the non-residential portion. And so what I'm strongly advocating for is, as we have in the government so much conversation around integrated services, a continuum of care, if they can't add non-residential portions that absolutely support the residents above, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to get at. So that's what our advocacy is right now, strongly. And I would like to see at least $2 to $3 million come in from the government to sort of put their money where their mouth is, I guess is the best way to put it. Did that answer your question, Peter? And we're just about to leave, but you know, if somebody of the team can put my email in there, I love direct questions as well. Happy to always talk about projects and programs here and our impact. Like I said, in 15 minutes, we are gonna come back for our AGM, some other remarks, some words, some typical motions that won't be a surprise around financials, et cetera, as we do. Hope to see you back. We couldn't do this work without you. We're in this transition, but we know that we'll see you're on this journey with us. We can't wait to see you at the ribbon cutting. I also want to say a huge thanks to the development and communications team here on this call who helps facilitate these gatherings and invites, et cetera, and so forth. And thanks to our board for your steadfast and steady hands in helping us and our leadership and our staff go through these transitions. Your support and commitment to the work helps us navigate this together. So thanks everybody. Look at that, 5:15. You have another 2 hours of that sun. No, wait, go to the AGM first and then you'll have another hour of sun. Anyway, thanks everybody. So nice to see everybody. You can turn your mics off and say goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
God bless you all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you at the AGM.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.